Welcome, people of the internet. This is something new. I haven't decided at the time of recording on how to call this. You probably know because you read the title. John has a favorite. No, he's there. That's the side where Jerry is normally on. That's John where he is now. That's John. You know John from OTT,
Hello.
formerly known Beast of War, and I don't think there was a name before then.
No, it was just Beast of War before that.
Yes, it's still very sad that Warren hasn't opted for Breasts of War, but
Well, when you're dyslexic like I am, sometimes it is that.
yeah, don't Google grandfather clock. Don't. So what's this all about? For some time now, I've been feeling that most of us sitting in front of the screen know people in the industry only from one aspect of their life, being the painter, the builder, the rules guy, the one who does the let's plays, or in case of Jerry, the one who does everything except painting his own stuff. So I was thinking I'd like to drag in people from around the industry and have a little chat about them, about what's making up their life, how they did come to the hobby, and what other interests are there, so that we might see a bit of more of the person that's behind the brush, potentially. So Lloyd wouldn't be here. He's busy building Rome.
So it certainly hasn't been a day or 7 years.
When I spoke to Jerry last time, the stuff is still sitting in his room, so I'm guessing.
Yep. Not going well.
There's a slim chance he might start building Rome at some point, especially since now the form is up and online and people are starting asking questions.
There is that, yes. There's I've heard some preliminary talk of there being a lot of questions about Rome directed at Lloyd.
Wasn't me.
I mean, who knows who it could have been? Like,
could have been anybody. Are you allowed to answer that form for yourself?
I haven't tried. I am going to try after this, though.
I mean, technically, it's just a form on the claim price backend software thingy. So it's not even asking for any credentials. It's just, what's your username? Who do you want to ask? What's your question?
I'll have to ask myself some questions.
From John to John. What am I doing here?
Just why?
Can I go home now?
Is it home time yet? Am I allowed to sleep?
Okay, but before I start nagging you with boring and potentially uninteresting questions, could you tell the world a bit about yourself?
Oh, that's interesting. Because that's a horrible question to talk about myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, the usual is, where do you live? What's your educational background? And how was your first steps in the hobby? Because that's the connection point of it all.
Well, so obviously live in Northern Ireland with the rest of most of the OTT team. Ben is the English evil exception to that. My work is I do, technically on paper I'm called a senior hobbyist. I am a hobbyist. I do bits and bobs around OTT. I do the colors up, which is tutorials. I pitch in on editing and let's play recording and that sort of stuff as well. So it's a bit of an everyman kind of thing with a bit of specialization on the hobby side of things. Now, education is not that interesting. The highest level of education I have is a degree in history, which has served me no purpose since I went and got it done, other than knowing how to professionally go, actually.
Well, actually, you're
actually.
fine if you look at me.
So yeah, standard primary, secondary education, then went on to university, but I did it late in life. I started university when I was 22. because I didn't have a lot of what the UK people know as GCSEs. They're like that level of education you need to move on into higher education. I had 2 out of the required at least 4 or 5 get into university straight from 18 to 19-year-old. So I found there was a entry level course to the university I was applying to that allowed people with not the required amount of education to get in. And they did a foundation year where they brought you up on the expectations you need to have and the understanding you need to have as a university student when you start your degree. So that was 4 years, and I have had very little use for it ever since. But I do think it gave me a slightly better work ethic afterwards. I kind of understood my time management a bit more after that.
Potentially,
Um,
having done history, I guess it will give you the tool set of doing proper research on your historical armies. So,
yeah, there's that. So the first thing that's really hammered home to you at uni, especially on a history degree, is if you touch Wikipedia anything like a 10-foot barge pole, we aren't going to give you any marks for that piece of work. If you cite Wikipedia, there's something wrong. Which became kind of funny because the dissertation I did for university was on the experiences of women in the Royal Ulster Constabulary. That was the police force in Northern Ireland until 2001 when they changed to the Police Service of Northern Ireland. That's a whole thing unto itself. The patent report and everything that basically said, yeah, the RUC is corrupt, so we're going to flip it on its head. We're going to give them new uniforms and a shiny new badge. And oh, look, nothing changed. Shock horror, nothing
surprise!
changed. It was an incentive to try and get, I'll paraphrase, an incentive to try and get a 50-50 split in the police force between Protestants and the Catholics. And when it changed to PSNI, it really didn't change any of the recruitment at all. It still sort of remained kind of majority Protestant, minority Catholic, then other religious minorities went into it as well. It didn't change a lot. A lot of the procedures did change, but back to what I was talking about, the dissertation, because it was a subject that hadn't been touched before, and it was an oral history project. So I went out and interviewed um, retired policewomen from that period, 1970 to 1980 was roughly the period I went for. There was no secondary reading on it whatsoever. So I had to go to my lecturer and say, well, what do I use as sources? Because I only have this one source, and it's a 50-page transcript of these 5 audio interviews that I conducted. And he just looked at me and went, just find anything that says police in it because there is just no other reading. And I was like, okay, cool. I just had random books on hand. I had a stack of 6 or 7 books, which apparently were all of them, and just went, yeah, that kind of lines up with what this woman said. So yeah, let's just cite that at the bottom of that page, and that'll do, right? That was awkward and very fulfilling. That's the first piece of proper historical work I think I did was go out and do that project. So
Well, I'm guessing interviewing people who actually were at an event, interviewing them about the event is in itself a educational experience that's hard to put
very,
into books.
yep, very. And I had a list of I give every woman I interviewed, I gave them the same amount of the same questions. Why did you join? Um, what did you find the training like? Because the training camp at the time was very just getting used to having women in the police. Never mind just having the police being expanded due to the rising troubles and stuff in Northern Ireland, but there wasn't a lot of female officers at the time. So they had this sudden influx of women coming in, and some of them said our training uniform was World War II British battle dress because they had nothing else. So they were walking around in male fitted or male cut clothing because there was literally nothing else for them. Which I found really fascinating, and like porta cabins stacked on top of each other for bunk rooms and all that sort of stuff because it just they were not prepared for the influx of female officers, which was fascinating. Although if you want the most fascinating part of it, there was a question. One of the interviewees gave me a really interesting comparison because she served in Belfast when the riots were starting to become a bit more nightly, a bit more frequent. And she said initially, as female officers, you were able to walk in front of the police cordon and talk to the rioters. And she was like, because you were wearing a skirt, you just were wearing your regular uniform, nothing fancy, no riot gear or anything like that on, and you were able to talk to the people at the front line of that riot. And you could try, she said, you could occasionally calm them down and get them to back off a little bit. Then the RUC brought in a every police officer must be armed. You must carry a sidearm. This was part of the emergency provisions that were given to the Northern Irish police at the time, around 1970, where they all had to suddenly carry sidearms. And the female officers were then issued with trousers. And she said the switch of attitude was suddenly, you're no longer a female police officer, you're just a police officer. You're seen the exact same way as the males because you're now armed and you're wearing trousers. And sometimes they were given flak vests and riot gear and stuff to wear as well. You were just treated exactly the same as the males. You had no other power and you were treated exactly the same. You got the same amount of stones and petrol bombs and stuff thrown at you as well. So it was a very interesting project that opened my eyes to a lot of things from a historical context and a human context. Seeing that some women were saying we would have been better off staying in skirts and not having sidearms, and some of the others going, actually, in our branch we were okay with that because it didn't affect us as much.
Yeah, it's a bit scary how appearances can change people's minds.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of
So-
course, I had the best interview I had, who was actually a woman who taught me how to drive for my driving test. She was, this is great. She was in the traffic branch, so she did all the road stops and the police, the interception cars and all that sort of stuff. And I asked, the question was, what was your favorite period of working in the police? And all she said was, when we got the 2-liter escorts. I was like, okay. It's well saying she's a driving instructor now. It still is.
What was best in your life? When engine go boom.
When the engine got bigger in my car. Yeah, that was it. There you are. That's my educational background in a not so short nutshell.
So how did you end up with Warren and the lot?
Oh.
As I told you before, if there's a question you don't want to answer, that's fine.
Oh no, it's fine. So before I went to university, I sort of hopped around various little jobs around the local town. The occasional work in Argos or the occasional work in a cafe or whatnot, and I ended up working for the video games people, the video game shop.
Mhm.
And I think it was just after a Christmas period. I was sort of just dandering about on the shop floor doing some front facing or whatever. And these two fellas walked in, and one of them was carrying a white dwarf under their arm, and I was like, maybe I could sell this guy some Dawn of War, because Dawn of War was still a relatively good video game at the time. And I walked over and went, "Oh, do you guys play?" And they went, "Oh, no, we're just researching for something." "Why do you?" And I was like, "I don't really play that much. I paint though." And they're like, "Oh, we have this little project. It's tentatively called Beasts of War. Do you want to come over to our office and talk to us?" I was like, "Sure, that sounds exciting." They were like, bring some painted stuff with you." I brought everything I had painted that wasn't a war game model. I don't know why. I just wanted to impress them with good looking stuff rather than the wargaming stuff I was painting at the time, because my Space Marines looked like they'd been dipped in red emulsion. So I turned up and they were like, "Yeah, this is cool. Do you want to help us with this project?" And they outlined it. And I went, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Did that for 3 months, just sort of part time with them, just here and there, a day here, half day there. And then they eventually said, "Do you want to come on full time?" I was like, yeah, cool. And that's how that started.
So it's your fault that you stuck with them because you thought you could sell them a video game.
Yes. Well, that was my job, and to be fair, they were asking for me to approach with the White Dwarf under their arms, so.
Who in the right mind runs around in shops carrying a white dwarf under your arm? I thought they were mandatory brown bags.
Yeah, openly carrying something as dangerous as a White Dwarf. There should be a license against that.
What year was that?
2007, I think. Yeah, roughly 2007, 2008, because I went to university in 2010. Yeah.
That's not as long ago as I would have thought.
It feels longer to me as well.
Well, I come to think when I got my first white dwarf, that was September of '97.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was in the middle of doing military service.
I think my first white dwarf was somewhere around 2004. Was my first copy of it. So that's when people were telling me, hey, do you know all those little models you build? You know, there's games that you can use models in, and I was like, oh wow, sign me up.
Yeah, it's funny when you don't have a connection of sorts beforehand. They seem so wild, these things. I do remember that I was very bored during guard duty on one evening, and when I had a break, I went to the mess, and there was various magazines to be bought by lonely soldiers, most of them having
yeah,
and the rest was cars and modded cars, and at the side there was this cartoony looking white dwarf thing. And what's that? Let's give that a look. And inside was the introduction to Gorka Morcor and Gothic and Epic Space Marine. That was an amalgamation that I couldn't comprehend that those were different games that all looked so similar. And that's how I lost my mind.
Well,
I stared
we all have
into
an
the
origin
abyss,
story.
and the abyss said, "That'll be 4049."
That'll be the rest of your life, please, sir.
Thankfully, I got better.
I got in charge of it.
Mainly due to the fact that while in university, I was so broke I couldn't afford playing the game. So, yeah.
Oh, I just didn't. I did the typical student thing of, oh, I'm going to buy some models and then I'll be all right. I'll buy enough food, enough dry stored food for the semester. Never
Didn't
worked
work.
out.
Nope.
No,
never
works.
So you jumped into the hobby via the means of people telling you that the hobby you're already doing is actually a different hobby.
Yeah. So ever since I think it was from about the age of 7, my parents realized when I was in primary school, all my teachers were feeding back saying, look, he doesn't have a lot of attention span. He just zones out and is quite disruptive and stuff like that. And this is before, the likes of ADD or dyslexia or anything like that was really sort of at the forefront of what you would look at if you had a child that had some issues, particularly in an educational environment, because it's very hard to sit still in an educational environment and have anything that is slightly neurodivergent. So my parents got together and said, right, well, what can we do to help focus him down a little bit and see if we can build that concentration level up a bit. So they went to the local model shop, because there was at least 3 in our town at the time, and bought me some Airfix models, little tanks, little airplanes and stuff like that, and I started building there. And I can't remember if it was just the smell of the old enamel paint, the smell of the glue, or
It's
trying
the glue.
trying to stick the rubberized tracks onto a 1/72 Marder II, which was my first model kit. and not understanding that the plastic glue wasn't going to bond this rubber to the plastic, and you had to use a hot knife to flatten a little pin on it, and use super glue to do all that. That first model I did was painted grey with red primer camouflage, if I recall right, because all I can remember from it is looking at it and the smell of the enamel paint. So from there, it kind of became a not an obsession. It became a something to do in the evenings because I live out in the countryside. There was no internet. There was no computer. It was, what do you do in the evenings? Well, you sit in your room and there's the TV on, but it's usually BBC Two, and it was crap at the time, and it's still not much better. So it was build model kits. Just sit down, let's build a Lancaster tonight. I can do that in 4 hours. As a child who's good, yeah, I can slap that together in 4 hours and get it painted by the weekend. Doing the best terrible job I could as a child. So yeah, from there it just became a bit more of a hobby just to pass the time. And then secondary school started, and then we bought our first PC with a dial-up modem, which was terrible because now I was able to have access to websites that would show you better painted stuff and better built stuff. And I just wanted to try harder, so all I did was just try harder and try harder, up to the point where my ceiling in my room was covered in aircraft having some kind of weird dogfight. There a B-17 going straight into a Heinkel 111, and a BF-109 doing a barrel roll over a Hurricane.
And in the middle of all, there's the USS Enterprise.
Yeah, although I wasn't a Trekkie. I didn't do any Star Trekkie models. I have one Star Trek model, and it's still in its box because I decided I was going to drill out all the windows, and I did about half an hour of that and went, it's gonna just go back in the wardrobe for a while. So yeah, it started out as a way to calm me down, give me some concentration, give me some focus, and now it's turned into whatever the hell it is now for me.
So when at that timeline did the 1-to-1 scale tank hit you?
The 1-to-1 scale started before any of the model stuff. It was first on the scene, because when we moved out into the house we currently live in, this almost caused a divorce, which is hilarious. This never doesn't make me chuckle. My parents had just moved into this house. I was about 3, I think, and they were sat in the living room. The living room didn't have a carpet, didn't have curtains on it. And Mum had turned around to my dad and said, next thing we buy for this house really has to be curtains because it's starting to get cold. And Dad was like, yeah, no bother. 2 weeks after that conversation, a low loader turns up outside the house with what Mum only could describe as a giant rusty box with rusty stuff in it. And she didn't talk to my dad for 3 weeks after that, because he was saying nothing but, it's an investment, it's something I can put together, I can paint it up, I can get it running, and then I can sell it. And I'm here to say 36 years later, that Bren gun carrier is still in our shed. And still runs and drives mostly. And is also a minor celebrity. It was used in a movie 2 years back, so...
Well, so
that's
technically it is an investment, because an investment is as long an investment until you sell it and it becomes profit.
That's it. So yeah, the 1-to-1 stuff came. Yeah, the 1-to-1 stuff came first, and I never really understood, because I just grew up with it. I never understood that it was abnormal to have a family that would be into that sort of stuff.
You don't have a tank in your back garden? That's weird.
What do you mean? What do you mean you're not into this kind of stuff? I thought everybody's backyard was a scrapyard.
Makes me wonder why your parents didn't just hand you a drill and some scrubbing pads and send you your way in the shed and clean up some rust to focus.
Oh, they did. But that wasn't that. Yeah, I
Wasn't
don't
that
know why
enough?
they didn't. Apparently not. Apparently it was too noisy.
Maybe they should have given you paint for the
Yeah,
smell.
yeah, they should have done that. So yeah, the Bren gun carrier was the first vehicle that turned up, and I think around that period, up until I finished primary school, Dad acquired another 3, 4 vehicles at the time. So we had the Bren gun carrier turned up first. Then we bought a American World War II GMC, the Juice and a Half truck. Then we got a Ferret Scout car for some reason. I have no idea why we bought a Ferret Scout car. They're a piece of shit. They're still a piece of shit even today, and people are asking silly prices for them. They're a piece of shit.
Yeah, but
And
that's
we got
that's your argument. It's something that in the past nobody wanted. Now it's a collectible. It doesn't
yeah,
matter if it's working or has a purpose at its lifetime. It's now a collectible.
that describes the Warhammer 40k secondhand market in a nutshell.
I didn't want to go there, but yes.
It that's me looking through the secondhand market going, why are you charging that for a model that isn't even in the book anymore? Come on.
Because people want it. People want to
Yeah,
finish their collections.
that's true.
I mean,
True.
I have on a small tangent. When I start reading a book series, I want to read every book in the series, and I've got a complete collection of the BattleTech novels. I've got a complete collection of the Shadowrun novels. I don't have a complete collection on Star Wars novels. Why? Star Wars Young Jedi Knights. They are bloody fucking expensive. At least the later parts. The earlier are more prominent, but I think around part 6 or 7 they start to get silly prices, and I think the last 2 or 3 didn't even get translated to German, so they're more hard to come by. So
Yeah.
but that's why people pay stupid prices for things that have no real value in itself, other than
True.
being
Just
a
being a collectible.
yeah. I mean, stamp collectors.
Yeah.
They're paying large sums of money for teeny wincy pictures that have been on somebody's envelope and potentially have still saliva on them.
Yeah. Okay.
You
I mean,
don't
it's fair
collect
enough.
chewed gums, do you?
There's bound to
Well,
be someone
maybe
out
some
there.
people
Let's
do.
not. Let's not look at that. Let's
No.
not look into that any. We'll find something disturbing at the bottom of that rabbit hole.
Yeah, it starts with feet and collecting toenails of stars, and then it gets weird quickly.
Good to know.
I'm not saying that
Very
I
good.
know people, but I know people.
Careful.
So, you started with big tanks, then there were small tanks and tiny fighting men.
Yep.
At what point did you? How did you get introduced into the gunpla?
Oh, see, John lore is very twisty. John lore is very twisty. So
So your hobby life is a Gundam, an anime.
oh, it is very much an anime at times. Because like you said, I got introduced to the big stuff first, then I got introduced to the small airfixy stuff, and then around 1995, yeah, it was 95, 96. We had gotten Sky TV, I think, around 1994, and Cartoon Network was on it. And Cartoon Network in either 95 or 96 was like, there's a new cartoon series coming called Gundam Wing. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but the advertising for it has giant robots with really big guns on them. So I'm going to watch this regardless of what it is. So little me that was only just getting really into airfix stuff and small scale models was suddenly introduced to Japanese anime and Gundam, and I was absolutely taken by the designs, like the shapes of the mechs in Gundam Wing were iconic to me anyway. I mean, they're iconic to a lot of people that got into Gundam in the West because it was the first properly English translated and English broadcast Gundam series that went to proper TV. So Cartoon Network basically got the Western premiere of Gundam Wing. I know it's
I
not the first anime, but it is one of the first Gundam series to come out
if
in
you could,
English in the
if you
West.
stay with Gundam, I can't say for sure, but giant animated robots,
You
Macross
had
was first.
yeah,
Robotech.
you had Macross, Robotech, and was Evangelion around the same time as well?
I think Evangelion was middle 90. Because
Yeah.
I just have that on my mind because my introduction at that point of the hobby was actually Macross slash Robotech, watching on Sky Television Sunday mornings
What
about
channel
10
was that
years
on at the
prior.
time? Because
There was a show on Sky called Fun Factory,
right,
and they
I
had
don't
all
remember
the
that.
cartoons. They had Starfighter X, Bomber, whatever that called was, Jason the Wheeled Warriors, Robotics,
Mm.
Transformers, you name it. Every of those late 80s, early 90s children cartoons, they had them all. And at that point, there was also Robotech.
Yeah, I think Robotech had maybe finished by the time I was sort of settling down to watch Cartoon Network. Because my era of Cartoon Network was the likes of Dexter's Lab, Cow and Chicken, and reruns of the original Transformers before they brought out any of the other series
Beast
after that.
Wars and stuff.
Yeah, that sort of era. So Gundam Wing was my first introduction to that. It was the first proper anime I had actually watched. I know when I was younger, I had a babysitter who was the typical friggin' early 90s goth guy, like all black, long hair, a complete dude of a guy. He always brought VHS cassettes to watch while he was, once he'd put me to bed, once I was asleep, he had Akira, Ghost in the Shell, all the stuff that someone
Dominion,
my
Tank
age.
Police, Uri Sukitoji, The Legend of the Overfiend.
He
All the good
he
ones.
even he even had, because I remember this being burned into my eyes as a child. The I literally watched a review of it last week. Barefoot Ganon or something.
That doesn't ring a
It's
bell.
a it's a movie that starts off with the most horrifying depiction of the bombing of Hiroshima, and everything goes into slow-mo when the bomb explodes, and it shows people literally like melting and being vaporized and stuff, and that was burned into my brain.
I do seem to remember the scene. Um,
Yeah, it's a very famous animated scene. I think it's called Barefoot Gan, if I recall right.
isn't that
Um,
Last of the Fireflies?
mm, no, I am going just
I know I've seen that scene, but
Bare Barefoot Gan.
it
Barefoot Gan is what
might be that I've
the
seen that scene that because it has been used in potentially a music video of sorts, but I do
yeah.
remember what you're describing.
Yeah, Barefoot Gen. That was burned into my mind as I think was maybe a 6-year-old,
Yeah.
because I happened to walk in and he was watching. He had just started watching it, and I was just watching people being vaporized. I was like, I don't know what this is, and it terrifies me. So yeah, apart from the dude of a guy of a babysitter who was friggin' like so friggin' cool. He was like that guy that you look up to. You go, I want to be more like you when I'm older, and I ended up being the exact opposite. Uh, uh,
So Pete Steele
he
came around and did a babysit on you.
Yeah. So yeah, watched Gundam Wing in 95, 96 on Cartoon Network. Then there was a old music shop down, actually funnily enough, just across the river from where my office currently is, where the OTT office currently is. It was called Graham's. It was the old proper. You walk in and they had vinyls and the latest CDs and stuff like that, but they also did like wrestling figures and all that sort of junk. And occasionally he would have little model kits just sitting in the corner, just random stuff he got imported from Japan. And there was Gundams, and I was like, I've watched Gundam Wing, I'm going to buy one of those. So I think maybe 98, 99 was my first Gunpla model, which I didn't understand because they weren't from Gundam Wing. I just got them because they looked cool. I knew Gundam Wing, and what he had wasn't from that series.
But they looked similar enough.
They looked. They were the same colors. The box said Gundam on it, and that was basically good enough for me. I had no idea who Shining Gundam was because he wasn't in Gundam. That was my.
Not like me grabbing my first model kit for Robotech. What basically was just a F-16 and a F-16 looking like robot that also could have been a battle mech for BattleTech.
Yeah, very very strange how Robotech became very similar, or was it vice versa? They both kind of emerged around the same ish kind of period. Robotech.
I seem to remember that in an interview they did not confirm, but hint at, yeah, we have been inspired by some of what Macross did.
Yeah.
And since Macross is older than BattleTech and Robotech isn't a one-to-one translation, it's a recut. It's not really the same TV series as far as I know. I've never cared to check. But so basically Harmony Gold then got license for the video, put out the designs, BattleTech did their designs, and whoopsie, they look very similar, and then yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah.
Hence, some models are not available anymore.
Yeah, that's the first introduction to Gunpla was before I even got in anywhere near wargaming. Nearly a decade before I got into wargaming.
So
hobby wise,
model building, restoring World War II tech, Gundam. Where did you find time to add RC models? How did that happen?
RC models. This is another story I can completely blame on my dad. My dad is responsible for most of my hobbies, bar the wargaming, and the radio control stuff is definitely his fault. Definitely, kind of not really his fault, but it is at the same time.
Oh, before you go on, because your mother wanted the next thing to be curtains, I'm guessing she got her curtains in the end.
Oh yeah, she got curtains, and she got the curtains hung up. She got the carpets put down, and I don't think there was anything else said about the pile of rust that was left outside the garage.
Just want to make sure that the kitchen is finally done after 30 plus years.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, no, the house is great now. It's just when something new arrives in the yard, you tend to just close the blinds and just ignore the next thing that has arrived.
And when he comes around the corner, she just goes.
One quick tangent. So Dad was looking for a Jeep for a long time, a World War II Jeep, and a engineer who had passed away. There was an auction happening at his site, and Dad was like, "Oh, he'll have some tools and stuff that I need and that sort of stuff." And he goes, "I'm pretty sure I remember as a child being on that farm, and that guy had 2 World War II Jeeps that he bought off the army. So I'm going to go to the auction and have a look." So he's at the auction and he sees a gearbox for a Jeep come up, and he's like, "Oh, I know what that is." So he bids on it. He got it for £15 or whatever because no one else in the room knew what it was a gearbox from. He did. And about the auction took a break at one point. He went round the back of one of the sheds to take a piss, and just seen this Jeep lying in a hedge with trees growing up through it and everything. It was painted blue, and there was bits falling off of it, and it was all just in this hedge. And he went, "Oh, I thought this was the place I was thinking about." So he went to the widow of the fellow that passed and said, is that Jeep going to be in the auction, or are you going to sell it? And they were like, "No, we're probably not going to sell it. We'll keep it because it's been on this farm, been on this property since 1948, I believe, was when they bought it off the British Army originally." And he said, "Did you have two of them at one point?" I said, "Yeah, we had one that was painted yellow and one that was painted blue." He goes, "All right, well, that's the blue one sitting around the back of that shed." He goes, "Look," takes out a piece of paper, writes down some stuff on it. He goes, "Here's what I think it's worth. Here's my number if you want to contact me about it." And they went, "Yep, no problem." So that's okay. He comes back and he tells me about this Jeep and everything that's lying in a hedge. And 2 weeks later, him and my mum were out shopping or whatnot, and he must have got a call while they were out doing something else, because I was in the house for a couple hours, and they came back, and my dad, love him, Dad has this smug little smile that he always puts on when he's done something he shouldn't have done. And because he walked into the living room and I went, "You all right?" He just looks at me and goes, "I bought a Jeep." And then he looks behind him, and Mum was sat over his shoulder like that. And he
Glaring
goes,
stare of death.
he looks back at me and goes, "We bought a Jeep." And he looks back over his shoulder and she's still. And he looks at me and then he looks at the floor and goes, "Your mum bought a Jeep."
Buying by committee.
Yep, that's how things work in this family. It's not. It's the only successful example of communism I've ever seen, because it's not Dad's Jeep, it's our Jeep.
But
It's not.
She has the keys.
She has the keys and the controlling interest in the purchase, usually.
So RC models are to blame on your dad.
Yes. This was another one of those random spot buys that I had no idea was coming. So this was a Christmas. Back in the day, the Christmases were very, you either get what you want or you got something completely unexpected and you have no idea what to say about it. And this was one of those, I have no idea what to say about it. So he got me a Tamiya 1/16 Tamiya Tiger 1 Christmas back when I was about 13 or 14.
Your dad doesn't
I opened
do
the box
half things, does he?
No.
1/16?
Oh yeah, it's still on the shelf up here. That's, yeah, and it still runs. I opened it and I went, "Why did you buy that?" Like I've owned one radio controlled car up to this point in my life, and it was God knows what it was. It was a Nico something or a Tyco something or other, and I'm pretty sure it was smashed to smithereens by the time the tank turned up. And he looked at me. He just went, "I thought it was cool," and I was like, I looked at Mum, and she went, "He bought it for you because he really wanted it." I was like, "Ah, right, okay."
That sounds about right. That's some dad looking at toys going, "Oh, I wish I had this as a child."
How can I justify buying this for myself when it's like, "No, I'll buy it for my son. It's fine. Yeah, I'll do that."
You probably have seen that, but there's this very cute little video where a guy is waiting at his car, and his girlfriend slash wife, whatever, comes up to him and says, "Oh, look what I got for Christmas!" And she pulls out a radio controlled car and a big box, and he just grabs it and goes, "Oh, honey, that's so nice!" And he's just glowing with happiness and is totally. And she quietly takes the card, which reads to our son in love, mum and dad, and puts it away and buys another one.
Yeah,
Just
that's not far wrong here. Sometimes not far wrong here. So yeah, he bought me that, and to be fair, it was a proper father-son moment because both of us built it. I got to build the turret because, in his words, it's too fucking fiddly. I was like, okay, well then you can build the hull, which clearly has more small springs and grub screws in it than the turret does. But I can understand why you're doing that, because you can actually see what you're working at, and the turret's a bit more narrow and small. I had small hands, so um, that was a good project. That was the only RC I owned for a long time. I just enjoyed playing with it in the backyard and mucking around. Um, and then I think in and around 2019 or 2018, I was just on some random Facebook page or whatever, and I seen this thing, North Coast RC, and I was like, oh, cool, North Coast RC, they're local guys or whatever. Joined the group, and they were like, yeah, we do all this. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So like crawler trucks and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, right. So I need to invest in a crawler now to go out with these guys in the forests. And one very quickly turned into, how many is in this background image?
Yes.
8. About 13. There's about 13 crawlers in my collection, and the tanks. For a while there, it was buy a tank nearly every year. So there's the Panther, the T55, and the Sherman were all bought year after year. So like a summer project, when the crawlers aren't going out because it's not muddy enough for the trucks, I went and bought a tank and did a tank project instead.
It's an
So yeah,
investment. Now it's toys.
yeah. It's kind of funny because originally I was very against anything that required batteries. I hated toys that had batteries in them for whatever reason. As soon as the battery was dead, that thing was useless to me, even though I could have just plugged a new battery into it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Old toys prior to, let's say, the 2000s, they drained batteries like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, you don't go out and buy yourself new batteries. You rely on your parents to have some stock.
Yeah.
And if they don't buy your batteries, you're fucked. And I think with the
much.
bigger, more professional gear, especially nowadays, the batteries that are not only higher capacity but also rechargeable.
Yeah,
which is a big plus.
that is a big plus. Now I've ended up now with all the RC stuff I have. I'm able to go to the likes of the local air show that happened in September, and just put on my own display. So I've had 2 tables with a tent and all my military radio control stuff all lined up on that, and it's a surprisingly interesting crowd pleaser, because a lot of families will come over and ask about what they are, and you always get the
a lot of dads will come around and say, "Oh, I always wanted that one."
That's it exactly. You get a lot of parents covering their child's ears and then leaning over to you and going, "So how much do these things cost?" And then you tell them and they go, "Oh God, never mind." They're like, maybe next year. Yeah, maybe next year.
Maybe next time you do such a table, put up a sign. Please be aware, these are not toys. These are hobby products. The costs upwards of ...
I should just give them a little business card. Here's what this costs. This is what this hobby does to people like me.
You don't want to see my bank account balance. You really don't.
You really don't. You couldn't buy a oh no. You couldn't buy a penny chew my bank account, if you really think of, given inflation as well.
Yeah, but that's
yeah,
that's what hobbies do. They drain your funds. Funnel them away.
That's it. The main thing with the radio control side of the hobby that I do is it's a change of scale from the wargaming. It approaches with different challenges. So it's not just the building and the painting, it's making sure the wiring is correct, making sure particularly with the crawler trucks, making sure you've done your waterproofing correctly, that you've selected the right paints to do it, that your tires are correct for the terrain you're going to drive on. It's the amount of times I've taken a truck out to the forest to drive with the other guys, and I've been driving it around going, actually, the motor in that is a little bit too slow. It doesn't have enough torque. So when I get home, I'm going to have to pull that one out and see what that one is. Is that a 28 turn or is that a 35 turn? I think maybe I need a 35 turn this time, or do I go brushless now? And it's great because it's a hobby away from what I usually do as a hobby stroke job, which is an important factor for me. So it's the change of scale, it's the change of skill set, but it's still within the same wheelhouse as modeling because it's still a model at the end of the day. It just moves and does other functions.
Yeah, it's a palette cleanser, I guess, is the
Yeah,
best way to
and
describe it.
that's the same with the Gunpla stuff as well, which is why I've been annoying so many people on tabletop with it, because it is a change, but it's still within the same realm as everything else we do as wargamers or everything we
And
do
to be
on
fair,
tabletop.
I have yet to find the one who tried building a Gundam model kit going, this is rubbish. Everybody who
Yeah,
tried picking up any of the kits went, Jeebus, this is fucking ingenious engineering. Why
yeah,
don't other people do that? And they're just that good. Even the cheapest of the Gunpla are so nice to work on.
yep. And you don't need to paint it if you don't want to. I very rarely paint any of the Gunpla I have. I've repainted 2, and that's only because I wanted a particular finish. I wanted a particularly weathered finish on one. The rest of the time, once they're built, I break them into sub-assemblies. I give them a coat of matte varnish, and then I weather over the top of that. The matte varnish acts as the primer by not
Yeah.
removing the color of the plastic from the model.
Yeah,
And it's another sort of same skill set, just different approach, and that's what I like about it.
I think that what fascinates me the most of about Gundams is when they're built, they're still fully articulate. It's just
Yeah,
you see this plastic sprue and go, yeah, I know. I build model kits. I use this pieces, put them together using plastic cement, and then I have a static display. Maybe
yeah,
on a car I can open the doors, but that's usually about it. And here you
yeah,
have a model kit that can give you the finger if you want.
yeah. Like the fascinating thing about some of the bigger gunpla models. If I have that perfect grade there, I could maybe pull it down if it's not glued to anything. No, it's fine. I just broke a bit of the ground. This is a perfect grade, so this is 1/60th scale. It's an absolute monster of a thing. It's got turned metal thrusters on its back and all. But what I love about the engineering of some of these kits is, if I can get it in such a way, you can see like the leg, for example. When the leg moves and bends, plates and stuff start to get out of the way of the
Yeah,
motion. So
it's
if you look at the
actually engineered and
knee,
not just put in front like a toy.
yep. So you look at the way the knee splits into 2 as the leg bends and allows everything to get out of the way of itself as the whole part moves.
Yep.
And that's all in a model kit that is clipped together, is all push fit parts, has no glue, has no paint, and you're getting something that is essentially a high quality action figure that any other company in the world would charge you maybe £500-600 for,
Yeah,
and
that's the thing.
the perfect grades aren't that.
It's mental. The amount of value, perceived value, especially you get for what you're paying for those kits is immense.
Yep.
It's just uh, anybody who's watching right now who never touched a Gundam model kit, it always put them off as child's play. Do yourself a favor, just grab the cheapest one from your local hobby store and build it, and then think again.
Yeah.
uh, I'd be surprised if anybody would say, yeah, this is a bad experience. You may not like the design, you may not like the way of the look and feel, but that's all personal preference. The engineering that goes into these kits is so fucking amazing.
It's the fact that, bar a couple of examples, no Gundam kit needs glue. No Gundam kit needs paint. You know, you can.
It's optional.
It,
You can
yeah,
cut a glue. You can customize. If
yep.
you're
And
careless, you might need glue because you clipped off something that shouldn't have been clipped off.
well, you the way the kits and the way the sprues are laid out, you'd have to be doing something very silly to make something like a mistake like that.
You have never seen me using clippers on anything. So there
Okay, well,
have
I'll
been
leave that one
details
to you.
gone missing on models. Whoopsie. Oh, I'm sure nobody will ever notice.
No, only Jerry would notice.
Yeah, and he
Got an
would
uncanny eye for that sort of thing.
and he would tell you about it for weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll remind you to remove that that mold line there for
Yeah. Mhm.
forever.
So and after RC cars and Gundams and tiny fighting men and big tongs, your latest endeavor is a car.
Yes. Yeah. I cannot. Well, I can blame my dad on this, but I'm mostly going to blame Instagram. Because Instagram made me look at an MX-5, particularly the Mark One, and go, "That's cute. Where do I get one?" Because of the pop-up lights. But then the more I looked into it, like I did my research, and like when I started seeing the cars and thinking, "Oh, that's cute," I went to YouTube and found some documentaries people had made on it, even an interview with the original designer of the MX-5, and I was like, "This is." I feel that on an emotional level. I understand what he's talking about when he's designing the car. I understand that he wants the exhaust sound. He wants the engine and the exhaust to sound like a little red racing car, because that's what he was trying to design. That was his brief in his head. So if you hear an MX-5 and you go, that sounds like a little red sports car, that's because it is. um, so yes, went ahead, started looking through Facebook Marketplace and stuff, and then I think 4 months down the line from the start of the search, this one came up pretty locally, actually, closer to where Shay lives. When I turned around to my dad and said, "I'm going to see this on Sunday. Are you coming with me?" He's like, "Okay, I'll come with you." And he was like, "Why do you want me to come with you?" And I was like, "Because you will know what you're looking at. You're the mechanic. I'm not."
Also, 4 eyes are better than 2.
Precisely. So we get to the house where this one is, and my dad instantly goes, "Oh, this is your man that used to do that back in the day. Yeah, I know who this guy is." And I was like, "Of course you do. That's fine. That's fine. You've been a mechanic since you were 16. You know everybody around here. It's fine." So the guy comes out, hands me the key, says, "Start her up, have a look around." So we started it up, drove it around the yard a couple of times, popped the bonnet, had a look underneath. And to my eyes, I was like,
Looks
this is
great.
probably the best example I've seen for sale since I started my search, because I know where they rust. I've done enough research to go, here's the problem spots. I'm not seeing those on this one. And I was turning around to Dad going, right, there's no oil out of the mainsail. There's no rust in the sills. There's no this, there's no that. Those are the spots I was taught from YouTube to look out for. And he goes, yeah, okay, yep, no bother.
But have you
We said, we'll
noticed?
think about it. Yeah. We said, we'll think about it. Got back into the car, and on the way back in, I went, what do you think? And he goes, I think that's probably the cleanest one you're going to get for the price. And I was like, okay. And then he looked over at me and went, but you don't have the money. And I was like, I don't have the money. He goes, if I give you the money and the promise that you're going to pay me the fuck back. And I was like, I will pay you the fuck back.
And from the
So,
back of the car is a voice, our money.
yeah, it's not my Mazda, it's our Mazda.
Yeah, but I get the appeal of a small, tiny cabriolet. Way back when Fiat introduced the Bacchetta, I was
I've not
looking at
seen a
that.
Bacchetta.
You haven't?
I haven't. How do you spell that?
Uh, Barchetta. It's Bracheta, I guess. Not quite sure. It's the same kind of vehicle, so a two-seater with not with pop
Ah,
eyes, but little.
yeah, it's more along the lines of a kind of like if a Porsche if a Porsche 911 and a Lotus Elan had a child.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Oh, it's quirky.
a shrunk down version of a Jag.
Mm. Actually, yeah, with the front of it, yeah, very
Yeah,
much so.
and when that thing came fresh to the market, I think was late 90s. I looked at that and
Mm.
said, that's a nice looking car. Sadly, way too expensive.
There's a video on YouTube called Italy's MX-5. So there you go.
Yeah, so and the if I recall correctly, the name of the car is Italian for little boat.
That doesn't surprise me.
It does look like a small little
Mm.
speedboat. It's very cutie and nice. Has its flaws, as I've learned over the years. The headlights do tend to fog up
It's
because it's just
it's
plastic over
yeah.
regular headlights, and that just degrades. But yeah,
It's also got an Italian engine in it, so mm, I don't know. I wouldn't own a Fiat in Northern Ireland, put it that way. I wouldn't have a classic Fiat in Northern Ireland. There'd be too much water around for it.
technically, I'm not owning any car at the moment, so there's that.
Never too late to start.
I had cars since I had my driving license in '93.
Mm.
This is my first year without a dedicated car to myself. We,
Nah, there's
the family, still have a car, which
yeah.
is technically my wife's, but I have until my Passat broke down last year. I had a car to myself almost every year since I had my driver's license.
Yeah. That's a change of pace. I don't know because where I live, you can't rely on local bus services. I
Now,
would have to drive or cycle.
you could rely on bus services here. I didn't really want to because they're always crowded. Don't go frequent enough, but when I need the car, I have the car, and my daily commute to work is a nice, comfortable half-hour drive.
Yeah,
And the funny
which is
thing
fine.
is, when I was driving by car, getting to the office was a 10-minute job because it was 6 a.m. and nobody was on the street.
Yep.
Getting home was a 30-minute job because everybody and the dog was on the street. Now,
Mm.
using bicycle, it's 30 minutes either way. With the added bonus, I'm not standing at any lanes and wait for people to move out of my way. I just zip by.
Yeah, you can see the benefits to that problem. It would from my house to OTT office probably be about maybe just shy of 40 minutes on a bike. There's a lot of up and down. There's a
Mm.
lot of hills, so
It's very
you're not
flat
being
here, so there's no
yeah.
inclination to compete. And yeah, there are parts of my body that do have changed a bit since then, marginally. But yeah, yeah, that's a different topic. So, is that your first car then?
Um, I'm going to say it's my first classic vehicle. Uh, I've owned cars before. I've had more or less the same as you. I've had cars since I passed my driver's license or had my driving license. Because I have apparently some sort of fetish with the Vauxhall Corsa. I've I've owned three of them, and the first one lasted a year before a unfortunate hole in the floor prevented it from passing its annual test, and then we got another one which lasted 7 years, Yeah, 7 years, and then my current one is almost 7 years. So me
Yeah,
and Vauxhall courses have a thing,
my wife
apparently.
had two. When
They're
I
a good car.
when I met her for the first time, it was of course, they're not Vauxhalls here, they're Opel, but they're the same
Yeah,
car. It's just a different
it's
badge.
the same thing, different badge.
Yeah, and it's the same car made by General Motors under different branding.
Yep.
And yes, so she had a Corsa B, and
Mine
at
last was a
one
Corsa B.
the second one, the
Yep.
second model they ever made, and um yeah, then she got pregnant, and then just 2 days before Christmas, we were driving to make shopping, and the car went up in flames.
Oh.
The battery exploded. We we
Uh,
we stopped at a red traffic light. Car died. I said to my wife, "Okay, I'm not getting this one started again. Let's push it to the side." We got out, started pushing the car, and then I noticed the paint started bubbling.
hmm,
And I knew, okay, at the point where the paint is now bubbling, I know that's the battery. And then flames came up, and I said to my wife, okay, get to the back of the car, grab everything inside the car you want to keep a hang of. This one is going down. It was
yep.
the 23rd of December.
That's the worst. That's the worst timing, but that is also the typical timing. You look
Yeah,
at
and
it, you go, "Well, for fuck's sake," you know.
the funny thing is, we waited very long for the fire brigade to come because it was freezing.
Yeah.
And the roads were ice, so there was no one was really going any fast. Remember, my wife was pregnant.
Yep. No
Yeah, that's
unnecessary speed or stress while
yeah, that's
pregnant.
that's that's a funny Christmas to have.
Mm,
Yeah, and the next car she bought was the Corsa C, so the follow-up model, and that failed catastrophically last year. Just short after my Passat died, the water pump did a boo boo, and
mm,
yeah, fixing that would have been possible, but the garage said, yeah, we can't really be sure if the engine didn't overheat at all, so we can't promise that changing the water pump will keep that motor running. Potentially, you have a head gasket leak, and then you can throw away the motor. And even just changing the water pump would be bloody expensive because it's the little
yep.
three-cylinder eco motor where the water
Oh,
pump is sitting right on the motor mount. So you would have to
yep.
remove the whole engine just to get to the
To
water
get at the
pump.
water pump. That's what happened with Shay's first car. He got a Corsa C, probably the same type actually. The Corsa C with the 3-cylinder engine.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
1.0 eco motor.
yeah, the 1. Yeah, the Eco Boost, tiny little turbo on it. That's this size. Um, that car of his went up because we think the person that sold it to him was trying to get rid of it as quick as possible. Because
They
they
knew
knew
something was wrong.
they knew the head gasket was on its way out, or the head gasket had already gone, and they, instead of getting the head skimmed, which you can't do on the aluminium blocked Vauxhall engines anyway, they just put a new head gasket on and then just wrenched the head back down as tight as possible just to sell it. Because 2 weeks later, the car had literally shit itself. It was spitting steam out the exhaust instead of smoke.
Mm.
So it was a
That
catastrophic water failure there.
that reminds me of a journey with my Mark II Golf. All of a
Not a
sudden,
Golf.
yes, all of a sudden, behind my car, there's a plumage of white smoke coming out, and sudden loss of engine power. White smoke in the back. That doesn't bode well.
What's the meme? Volkswagen, Das Auto.
Yeah, but there's a. When I was in the military service, all the guys were car maniacs, one way or another. Maybe related to the fact that I was in the automotive part of our unit, so everybody had a driving license for everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was a pastime to just think of weird names for different people's cars. So making abbreviations of car names. So the Golf was Gefährt ohne logische Funktion. Vehicle without any logical function.
We
The Opel, so what your Vauxhall was ohne Power ewig letzter. No power, always last.
Yep. Makes sense.
And
There's
the
a
stories go on and on and on, and just
we have some similar ones over here that Dad frequently uses. So there's a van manufacturer, LDV. He just calls it the large dead vehicle because it has no power at all. So it's any LDV. He goes, large dead vehicle.
yeah. Yeah, that's good. What was I thinking just about? There was another car. Damn it. Lost my train of thought. No, not to worry. Will come to me later.
Yeah. You can send me a message about that one when you come when it comes to you again.
I mean, it was all in good fun because we had ample different car brands on site, so everybody had their favorites. Oh yeah, er fuhr fort und kam nie wieder. He drove a Ford, German word for be gone, and never came back.
Ford over here is fix or repair daily. Yeah.
Oh, to be fair, we had one of the early transits of the modern design in our unit. It was loud as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Barely any convenient interior because it's a military vehicle. Why would you need anything like air conditioning?
Why would you want air conditioning or cup holders? Come on.
But the engine really made that little car go.
Yeah, the transits are a decent sized diesel engine, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
And diesel.
I don't know what the engine is.
At that point in time, diesel engines were the preferred motors at any military vehicle in our region. So
yeah. I mean, nearly everything else in the military runs off diesel, so why not the cars, the vans? So keep it simple, stupid. Just give us diesel.
you should get yourself an Iltis.
An Iltis?
Yeah.
Why?
It's a nice little convenient car for going off road.
Goes back to Google.
It's the successor to the Kübelwagen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've seen those around.
It's basically a Golf Mark 1 with a different chassis and very big suspensions.
Yeah, and very narrow tires.
Yeah, but that thing goes round corners in no time.
On its side?
No, it really stays on it. You know that picture from the Mark II Golf that goes around the corner just on 3 wheels?
Yeah.
It's still very
that.
sturdy. It's just
Yeah.
It doesn't leave track. Just lifts the leg.
Just lifts the leg.
Casually.
Fair enough.
But you don't want to go faster than 100 kilometers an hour with those things, with the Iltis on any kind of motorway. Because the tires have such big tracks, the noise is enormous.
Yeah, they kind of do a roar kind of a noise to them.
And after you hit the 100 kilometers per hour mark, it just goes up.
It screams.
It doesn't help that the front screen is just a flat piece of glass in front of you, and the rest of the canopy is just some kind of weird plastic combined.
It's like a tarpaulin you would buy off Wish is your roof. Yeah.
And the doors are also just a plastic frame with some weird tarp stuff covering it.
When you do over 40 or 50 miles an hour, everything's doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to open a window, there's literally a zipper.
Ugh, no.
Because there's no glass in the door. It's just some translucent plastic. And after several years of being in service, you can't see shit. It's just,
Yep.
you just go forward. There's glass. Glass is clean. You can go.
I'm in the military. This vehicle is replaceable if I can't see out either side. That's their fault, not mine.
Exactly. And let me
I
tell you,
rely on other drivers to see me.
but driving that little thing through woods and rough terrain is fun as hell.
Yeah.
That's just,
Yeah.
it doesn't get any better than no power steering, not just ordinary brakes in the back. I think just drum brakes. So
Yep.
Good luck, Skipper.
Try it in a World War II Jeep. It's all drum brakes.
Yeah, and I think they were even, you had optional 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And the weirdest thing is that vehicle comes in diesel and ordinary gas variety because they used 2 different Volkswagen motors in that.
I would imagine under like engine aside, I would imagine that still runs exactly like a World War II Jeep because it has to have a transfer box where it has high and low ratio or 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. So all the vehicles of that period are kind of similar in their design because they're all after a similar output. They're all after a similar sort of function.
It's a product made for a certain task, and that's defining how it looks and feels. The weirdest thing I always felt about that thing is you have your key for ignition, like on any car.
Yep.
But you also have what they lovingly called the bone, which is just a little L-shaped piece of metal you had to put in a certain place and turn to lock in the battery. Because the battery
an isolator
would be dead.
switch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best protection ever against someone nicking your car. Just
it is.
No, can't try.
We have to fit isolator switches to all our military stuff. Otherwise, they drain the battery like fuck. if there's even a remote kind of semi circuit still there, it's just the battery's gone. Plus, a lot of the old World War II era stuff is 6-volt, and 6-volt just drains.
They don't hold the charge very well.
No, they're terrible. I think every summer, at least our Jeep needs a new battery, at least, and that's with an isolator switch on it. Every year, that little 6-volt battery can fuck off because it'll never charge again. It won't hold it if it is charging, and it's just done. We have to push start it. How many times we've been to shows with it, and we've had to bump start it down a hill.
At least that's an option on those vehicles.
True.
Can't try that doing with an automatic. Good luck.
No, you can't bump start an automatic at all. I don't think. Maybe there's a way to do it, but they're stupid. Automatics are stupid. Automatic transmission should not exist.
Also, they sound weird when on the road.
No, I drove a friend's automatic Astra, and she was like, okay, well, we'll just take it out onto the main road. And I was like, yep, no problem. Got out of the 30 zone, and I went, let's see what this thing can do. And I just put my foot down. I just held it to the floor and just watched the speedometer just. I was like, this is not fun. She was like, what do you mean it's not fun? You're doing 95. And I was like, yeah, but look how long it took me to get here.
Also,
it took me too long.
Where's the fun in driving when you can't use your hand to manual just go? Next.
That's what I love about the MX-5. It's got a little short throw 6-speed gearbox, so it's the gear stick is this length, like it's nothing, and you can just the way the center console is, you can just set your arm resting naturally,
so
and
through the gears.
Your hand is literally just sitting on top of the gear stick. So the moment you hit the clutch, you just really small motions with your hands to get it into gear, and it is wonderful. It gives you the sense that you're in an actual race car, because you can switch really quick and be really aggressive on the gearbox, and it just sits there and takes it all, and it feels wonderful and it sounds wonderful. And
So what's
that's
the biggest
something.
what's the biggest wheeled car or vehicle you ever drove?
The biggest wheeled vehicle I've driven was, does a half track count?
Nah, that's the
Got
track
wheels in the
vehicle.
front.
Yeah, but it got tracks.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Biggest wheeled vehicle is probably a Bedford MK. When we used to own a Bedford MK, and they're a 2-ton or a 3-ton cargo lorry. A bit like the modern MANs
Hmm.
that the army use, but just built by Bedford, and it was a piece of shit. Uh, but that's the biggest wheeled vehicle I've driven. Biggest vehicle I've driven. I'm ashamed to say it, but it's actually a Abbott self-propelled gun. Would be the biggest vehicle I've driven.
I don't see any shame in that.
I've not got my hands on anything bigger than an Abbott yet. There's still time. There's
Yeah.
still time. They're
Lucky be doing service in a vehicle unit at a Patriots division. I've driven the 4-axle 15-ton MAN.
they're monsters.
They're fun. They're so
Yeah.
fun. Did you know you could cheat the system on those for the I'm not sure what they're called, where you put this recording disc in the speedometer.
Tachometer.
Yes, that those you can cheat them because
You're not
that
supposed.
thing
You shouldn't be
runs
saying
on.
this in public.
It's public knowledge, I'm pretty
Oh, it
sure.
is. Yeah.
Because those things run on 24 volts and they have two main batteries. You need to
Yep.
switch both batteries on to start the thing, but once it's running, you can turn off one battery, and that disables the limiter. You want to guess how fast that thing can go when there's no Patriot system attached and it's just the truck?
I'm pretty sure with no weight on it, you can get some pretty decent speed out of it.
It's getting scary fast in the most literal sense.
It's not the speed that's the problem. It's the stopping at the other end is the problem.
You have to remember, you still got the brakes to get the whole system stopping, and there's no weight at the back.
This is true.
So hitting brakes is the scary part about hitting brakes is you getting catapulted forward into the front shield.
Yeah. Yep. That happened to me in the Bedford, because the guy driving it was not used to air brakes and not used to all that sort of stuff. So
danger.
he touched the brakes, and I just went windshield meet face, you know.
Hello. Yeah, but that's a vehicle that's really fun to go off road with, because there's the sheer amount of power when you have 4 axles grinding.
They modify those for the Dakar rally and stuff like that. They use the big 4 axles, the big 8x8s there.
And for the longest time, I've fantasized about when I'm rich and famous, or just rich, I'm getting one of those for myself and make a camper van.
I've seen some beautiful camper van conversions of stuff like that, like really, really nice. And they have a 2-story camper van on the back.
And the funny thing is, if you don't take the 15-ton version, that's the carrying one, but you get the 7-tonner, which is the loader for the missiles, that has decent supports that go out the side for then loading off the missiles. If you keep that, you can put your camping on perfect level on any terrain. You will be sleeping like a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was fantasizing about buying one of those, converting it, and then go see Wacken.
Why not? They're not. I don't think they're that hard to get either.
No, but They are so fucking big. Where should I put that?
It doesn't matter, I would argue.
Um,
Other people would have to get out of the way for you.
nah,
Uh,
I'd argue if
can,
I would to park that in my street here, I would have the city officials within an hour saying, "You can't park here, mate. This is a
yeah.
residential area."
This is my residence. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but that thing, especially the 15-ton version, is has uh, uh what's the word I'm looking for? It's wider than usually allowed on streets.
Yeah. So you would normally be allowed what, 9 feet?
Something along those lines.
Something like 9 feet, but the big ones are like 11, 12 feet.
Yeah, they have on both sides. There's about a feet uh, going as fenders, and they're already marked in white and red warning stripes because they're
Yep.
yeah, a bit wider than your usual roads. So if I were to park that in front of our house, nobody would get past.
I mean, sounds like a them problem.
Yeah, but then my wife would have that look and say, "You can't do that."
Well, I mean, you're talking minor inconveniences here,
Yeah.
really. Like, there's a solution around
You're
everything.
not married, are you, John?
No.
You may want to
No.
ask your dad about these things.
Look, my dad's solution when it comes to problem solving is, if it doesn't fit, make more space. And by make more space, he generally means get a bulldozer, flatten out a bit more ground, and put gravel down on it.
Yeah, but
He makes
see,
the space.
see, there's the difference. Your dad has land property of his own.
True.
We are living in a flat. There's no bulldozing anything. I mean, maybe one or two neighbors could be moved farther away, but I think that wouldn't bode well on my records.
Somewhat problematic, yes.
Yeah, let's not go there.
No.
So, how are you seeing yourself in, let's say, about 10 years? Will we
Oh,
be
no.
at phase 5, or will you have moved on different ventures and have gotten a quote unquote proper job?
Oh, the proper job question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hate to do this, but it seems like it's still very much impossible for some people to imagine that not working 9 to 5 is an option.
Yep.
And it's not just for rock stars and musicians and painters. There's ample things you can do to make a living without being glued to a seat.
Yep. Oh, exactly. In 10 years, if everything worked the way I wanted it to, which never does, but if it did, I would personally like to be in the TV and film industry. Because another hobby of mine is occasionally cosplaying and prop making.
Oh, I forgot about that. I do remember you and Justin having your own costumes for Imperial
Fallout.
Legion and
We
what's
did
Space Marines.
We did our Imperial Guardsmen in 2019, and in 2018 we did our Fallout cosplays, our T60 power armor.
Yeah.
So we did those. But that's prop department, prop making, and prop painting more than prop making is a quiet passion of mine, and it's one that has garnered me a little bit of attention. I have talked to a prop master, which was a very interesting conversation. It felt like a job interview, and it really wasn't, because his first question was, "What do you currently do, and what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I have just said hello to you, sir."
Please have my child.
He got introduced to me. He was like, "Kevin, this is John. John, this is Kevin." And I was like, "Nice to meet you." And he goes, "Right. So what do you do, and where do you want to be?" I was like, I was like, well, okay. But he was very interesting, and he does more prop painting, like preparation for set. For example, have you seen the latest Ghostbusters movie,
Yes.
Frozen Empire?
Yes.
Do you know the orb, the little bronze orb?
Yeah.
The guy that I was talking to painted that one.
A lot of
He
dry
prepped
brushing, I
that
guess.
prop. Yep, he prepped that prop for them, and also did three or four others, which they didn't approve of, but the one in the movie that did approve of that one. He was explaining to me how that industry works. The sort of, it is ungodly hours. It is not 9 to 5. It is like 4 a.m. to when you're done.
It's this shit needs to be done yesterday.
Yes, and you have arrived this morning. So that's an industry that really interests me moving forward in life in general. Because as I alluded to before, our Bren gun carrier was involved in a movie a couple of years ago, and I got to spend 2 days on set while we were filming, and talking to the cast, mostly talking to the props guys, actually, to be fair, because when we were getting fitted for our costumes, because I was a driver along with my dad, and getting fitted for costumes, and they were like, "You into this sort of stuff?" And I was like, "Well, I know the World War II stuff well enough, but tell me more about what you do, because I want to know what the props departments and stuff are like." And they were explaining this, that, and the other, and I kind of walked away from those 2 days on set with a bit more of an idea of, I like the environment I'm in. I like the drive the people around me have, because it's very interesting, like listening to the audio guys talking about how best to record the sound of the Bren gun carrier when it's moving, and then coming to us as the drivers and the owners of the vehicles going, where would we get the best sound from? You know, me saying, well, on the carrier, it's really this location on the vehicles where you're going to get the best sound. It's going to give you more bass, or it's going to give you more treble if you move the microphone to here. And they showed me the microphones and the equipment they used, and I was like, this environment is full of creatives, full of outside the box thinkers. So they were coming up with solutions on the fly to stuff that usually, not necessarily in on tabletop, takes longer to come to conclusions with. On tabletop is very similar to working on set. Those days I had working on set, because everybody's creative, but the drive is different, and it's hard to explain when I say the drive is different. Working with with a wargaming, a war game in general, like, you set the table, you have the rule system, you have the cameras, and it's all a very similar setup every time you go to do it. There might be occasions where you need to think a little bit outside the box because of certain setups or certain table sizes and game sizes, model sizes. But when you're on a film set, it's a completely flip the script kind of thing going on. Like, if a problem comes up, because we had a problem with the Bren gun carrier, and we were trying to make do and mend during filming, which was interesting. And then me as a driver of a Jeep, and being told to do stuff that I just wasn't trained for, I just wasn't prepared to do. And then the stunt guy sitting beside me saying, "Right, you need to do your neck stretches first because this bit's gonna hurt." And I was like, "Oh, great." Yeah. But I think that's what draws me to movie prop and stuff like that, because it amalgamates a lot of what I love and a lot of what I'm interested in. So model making, painting, electronics as well, because of all the RC stuff. Like, the guy I was talking to, Kevin, was basically saying, if you have experience in anything like RC, robotics, anything like that, that's valuable for a lot of the prop work that you would be expected to do on the fly. If you're designing a mechanism that has to work, you have to understand how that mechanism could work and then make it work. Even down to painting, where he looked at one of the RC trucks I'd painted. In fact, it's the blue Toyota Hilux right here on the background. He looked at that and said, "Right, I can see what you've done with the weathering. Here's where," and he just started narrating the weathering on this vehicle. He went, "So there's where it's brushed some trees. There's where the paint has come off, where it's hit a wall or something like that." And he was able to narrate how the vehicle looked. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. I want to be able to say, I want a story behind every dent, scratch, and patch of rust on something. And his passion for it was initially sounded clinical, but as he explained it more, I went, I can see the vision that he has immediately.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
I was getting really fired up. I was listening to it going, yeah, I understand. And he was like, he said to me, I had to weather on Ghostbusters Frozen Throne. He had the job of weathering the ghost storage facility.
Oh,
And he was like, he said to me, how would you do it? And I went, well, I would look at parts that are most commonly touched and how often they would have been used and utilized. So the big handle that shuts that locks the trap down, that extracts the ghost, that is an area of high use. And he went, yeah, you're looking at high use and you're figuring out what that metal would look like after, maybe a decade of use or whatnot. And the back and forth, the creative talk was unreal. And to a degree, that's not what we do in On Tabletop. What we do in On Tabletop is a different design and execution process where we can discuss colors that we want for a particular table or a particular piece of terrain or army. And depending on how we want the stuff to look, kind of depends on the art style they want the finished product to be. So recently, just coming out on Tabletop actually now is the War Machine stuff that we were doing. So the unboxing for the 2-player starter set. There's 2 painting tutorials. There's a Khador one and a Signar one coming up, and there's a Let's Play.
yeah,
And
that went up today.
yeah, so the Let's Play, that's both armies I painted, both forces I painted, and the terrain that I painted for it as well. And I know I could have painted better, but there was a time constraint that said we can't afford to do more than that. But it's part of the process. You have to do the compromises and figure out what you want that's going to look good under camera, which is the interesting part. I like to see what would look good under camera. I think the main thing for me with the TV and film prop stuff is getting to work at a different scale, working with stuff that is going to you're expecting to be handled roughly by
Yeah.
actors and stuff like that. And
Oops, I
some
broke
of
my
the
lightsaber again.
yeah, and some of the processes like utilizing everyday stuff you would buy out of a gardening store. There's materials they use for weathering in TV and prop that is just stuff you get out of your local B&Q or your local Halfords. I like that. There's no this is the biggest thing for me. There's no industry standard with props and TV and film when it comes to making a prop or weathering a prop or painting a prop. There is
Yeah,
no
there's
army painter. There is no Citadel product.
there's no hobby tax because it's not a hobby;
Yeah.
it's an industry, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that's part of the course for thinking on the spot and coming up with ideas and never having to rely on the same recipe more than once if not needed.
Yeah.
So there's no incentive for an industry to make special prop things, aside maybe for blood.
There's always a way to do blood, and as was explained to me, there's always a way to do rust. It just depends how rusty you want something as to how much of the particular mix you want to use, or do you want the item to be pitted with rust? Do you want it to be older? Do you want it newer with a bit of lighter rust? And they say like the process is generally the same, but the approach can be different, or the outcome can be made different. And that's what I loved about doing the cosplay stuff with Justin, is that there was no just buy this paint because it's the way people do it. Don't buy Warhammer because you can only paint Warhammer stuff with Citadel paints. There's none of this. There's none of
Brand
this forced.
loyalty.
There's no brand loyalty and there's no forced product requirement. That said, on tabletop, I do enjoy certain brands of stuff. I love the current Army Painter range, that Fanatic paints that they came out with. It's the most user-friendly paint on the market, next to Vallejo. Vallejo is always going to be the number one, but for wargaming and tabletop stuff like that, that Fanatic paint range, whatever they've done with the actual medium, makes it the most user-friendly paint I've seen in a long, long time.
And let's not forget adding agitator balls to the finished product is a godsend for most people.
Yeah, that's something Citadel could immediately do and immediately improve a lot of their paints, particularly the contrast paints. Definitely need agitator
Yeah, I don't think
balls or
they will
something in
do
them.
though, because if they would, everybody would call them copycat.
Well, they'd also have to put choking hazard on the bottle, unless
Yeah,
they put it
because
in a
there's
dropper bottle.
no tiny spout that keeps the ball from getting out.
Yep. So it would be a choking hazard as well.
Well, I think prices in our hobby are a choking hazard for themselves. especially
they certainly can be. They certainly
especially
can
at
be.
certain companies. When you look at, oh, that's a tiny fighty person in 28 mil, you want how much?
Which has definitely led to the rise and the embracing of 3D prints. And I
Yeah,
think,
but
but
even before 3D printing, companies doing literal bags of miniatures for the
yep,
same amount of money is just at some point certain companies just went, as long as people pay, we will raise prices, and
yep.
we haven't found rock bottom yet. So
I don't think we're going to have that that critical mass that everyone keeps talking about, particularly with Games Workshop. We're not going to have a critical mass of the price has gone so high that people stop buying it. We're just not going to see it because, in my opinion, Games Workshop's not aiming at. Well, it's obviously not aiming at the return customer. It's not aiming at the veteran player or collector. It's aiming at the parent of the child that sees the stuff in a window and goes, "I like that. Can I
yeah,
have it?"
that's the one. That's the what do you call it? The high street walk by,
Yeah,
the passerby that just goes, oh, that's nice in the window. And I think that's the main reason why they started doing their Warhammer stores way back when, because they knew if we have a dedicated outlet for our stuff, we could just ask any price.
yep. And I think they did it early enough that when the likes of Warlord Games and Mantic started coming around and being other kids on the block that were producing, in a lot of cases, equally as good miniatures with superior game systems, they couldn't have supported making their own bricks and mortar stores. They couldn't have at all because no one would walk into them because it's not a Games Workshop.
Yeah, it's. I think
And
that's
even
just Games Workshop was at the right time in the right place and made
mhm,
the right decisions in certain aspects of their company's life, so that they actually gone up and above,
yep. And
even when they had some downtimes. But let's face it, they make more money than any other industry in our hobby combined.
yep. There isn't a company out there that could follow in their shoes with brick and mortar stores now. Absolutely not. Um, and it's a shame because even with the store we have, you know that most people are coming in for Games Workshop products. That's
Yeah,
why they're always front and center in your store, and a lot of independent stores have to put the Games Workshop stuff front and center, unless they really don't give a shit. And what they actually want to do is the little style of laying out the shop, where the stuff you want is at the back of the shop, and you have to walk past everything else to get to what you want. But the problem is that sometimes you would get that, and someone would walk into the shop and just not see Games Workshop and go, "Actually, no, these guys don't sell this
yeah.
stuff," and then they just walk out.
That's the sad times we're living in. I think the only thing that could really endanger Games Workshop and all the products would be if the capital venturists that are just sieving money at some point decide for themselves, yeah, that's not all the money. We want all the money, and then just
Yep.
drain all resources for whatever reason.
The shareholders are the biggest risk by
Yeah.
far. But you never know. They might just. I'd say a lot of the shareholders are just happy to get their dividends every
As
financial year,
long
and
as
that's
there's
it.
money coming out of Games Workshop to the shareholders, I think they'll be in perfect condition.
Yep.
But
But I have a feeling the market could probably, if Games Workshop hurt for a year, like they did, they kind of hurt in 2021, 2022, because they were trying to continue the rise they got out of the pandemic. Because a lot of the shareholders were probably going, well, why are your profits dipping again? Well, lockdown has ended. People are back outside again. You know, they're not buying stuff up hand over fist just to do something at home while they've nothing else to do. So
yeah, it's like with the video console industry that went, oh, why are our numbers not growing anymore? Yeah, because people are getting outside. They start to work again, and almost every household now has a Switch, PS5, whatever. They
yeah,
don't need more.
that's it. And then you could have one of every console, and until the next generation of that console comes out, you don't need anything else.
That's the thing. So, is there anything you'd like to say to the people out there? Or have we missed any interesting bits in your life that you feel should be out there to get to know you a little bit better?
Uh, all all I'll say is if you've never been to a military vehicle show and heard the sound of a chieftain driving around or just revving its engine, you'll never understand why I love that sort of stuff. you'll you'll never understand why machines fascinate me the way they do. Even fictional machines, Gundams and stuff like that. Machines fascinate me because they're the closest thing we have to humanity making something in its own image in a weird way. Like Jeremy Clarkson said it best about, non-car people look at cars as an amalgamation of metal, wire, rubber, and oil, whereas car people look at cars and say that has a personality. The designer put their heart and soul into that, making that machine come alive to the people that could see it. And that's kind of how I look at a lot of things in life. You know, Mecha and Gundam and stuff like that clearly do that because they wouldn't be humanoid machines if they didn't want to instill a sense of personality into the machine. It would just be a couple of boxes with a bunch of guns on it. Um, and when you see a tank driving around, it's the noise, the smell. Every machine has its own individual sound, and that is a part of the passion for me when it comes to one-to-one scale stuff like the Mazda and the vehicles that we own. I know that engine note when that engine cranks over and the engine's running. I can tell if that vehicle is happy or not today.
Yeah.
If there's something wrong with it, you can tell there's something not right, and it
When
speaks to you
you
in a way
start to
that's
hear that faint grinding noise because one of the bearings is starting to wear out, or
yep,
if your car has parked too long and the disc brakes start to rub against the pads and stuff like that.
yep, and that's it's a strange way for me to say, like, I've always hammered this home to people that want to learn how to paint or how to um, get better at a particular thing they are interested in, is just to open your eyes and open your ears a little bit and let the world speak to you in a way that is going to that you will understand. That's what I love about all the tanks and the machines and the world and stuff like that. That's why a lot of the painting I do, I love doing tanks and equipment and vehicles and stuff like that, because they have a way of instilling personality in them it's a very hard way to say, like, Warren hates me for this. Like, Warren always pulls my leg and says, stop anthropomorphizing machines. I'm like, well, why? He's like, because he asked me once, what's that computer doing? And I went, oh, she's not acting well today. She's acting a bit slow. He goes, stop calling it a she. Why not? It's being grumpy today. It's not being grumpy. It's just not working. No, it's being grumpy. If you restart it, it'll be fine. Give it a minute.
Yeah,
It'll work.
it's like when people start calling their cars names. They have a certain understanding on how it works and how it
Yep.
feels. And yes, we know it's an inanimate object, and yes, potentially most of the things we say that refer to emotions could be explained in some kind of mechanical way. But why bother going a hard road of explanation when you can just say, yeah, it's just not their day today. It's just
Yeah.
they're feeling a bit under the weather.
It's it's what my argument would always be, well, why did the veteran Spitfire pilots always say in interviews, you didn't get into a Spitfire. You strapped the Spitfire on and she took you to the sky. Why did the Lancaster bomber crews say when the engine started up, she was awake? They're
Yeah,
trusting
it's
they're trusting their lives with something that they can't accept is just an inanimate object, because it's protecting them and it's getting them there and back again. It's letting them do their job.
and also you as a human person, you have your senses to feel what the machine is doing, which is then
Yep.
giving feedback to your brain in a quasi emotional way when you say, yeah, this vibration is unusual, we need to
Yep.
pull over, there's something wrong with the real wheels or something.
Yep.
On a
Like,
side note, never try going faster than 100 kilometers an hour when your tire starts bulging.
no, don't do that.
That was a
Don't do that.
trip.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. I bet that ended well.
Happily, it did. Yeah, I was on my way to what do you call it? Basic training at the start of my military service, and roughly about 30 kilometers outside my hometown, the car just started going.
Yep.
Everything on the car, and my glasses went everywhere, and I said, this is not right. I can't. What's happening? Got off the street, looked around, found nothing. Oh, weird. Well, might be some mechanical problem. I can't see. Didn't see any visual representation of what's wrong. So I turned around, drove back home very slowly. Took my mother's car, went back to my unit, and 2 days later I got a call from my mum saying, "Yeah, we took your car to the dealership. You have a big bulge on one of your wheels on the inside, going under the car, so that's why I didn't see it." She sent me a picture that, yeah, it looks like a big fucking tennis ball just coming out of my wheel. That could have ended very pleasantly.
Yeah. That could have ended with you upside down in a hedge somewhere or in a field.
To be fair, that little Polo didn't go past 120 kilometers power. So
Yeah.
even if that tire had gone, I'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
Though, come to think of how rusty that car was, it probably would have just disintegrated completely.
Do you know when they say, like, crumple zones were introduced into cars? Well, the more rusty the car, the more crumple zones it has. So clearly, the safer it is,
Yeah,
the more rusty it is.
I'm not going to mention that at one time I got to my car and there was a piece of what's it called? The beam that goes from the front to the back.
Chassis?
It's part of the chassis, so there's a piece just fallen off.
Oh.
So there was a 2-hand wide gap in the frame.
Not so good.
Do you want to know how I fixed that?
You didn't?
Oh, I did, kinda.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I I want to say duct tape.
Not really close. Try again.
Close. Zip ties.
How can you close a hole in metal with zip ties?
You drill more holes.
Nah,
You acquire more holes for the zip ties to close the hole.
no, I used self-adhesive aluminum tape, and then
Okay.
just went black spray over it so that in case of
Yep.
a control point of the police, that they wouldn't be a gaping hole in the side of my car.
As long as they didn't poke it with anything, yeah.
Guess how the MOT went?
I bet that passed with flying colours. Not gonna
There
lie,
was
I bet they
flying
poked it.
stuff, yeah, but I don't think
Yeah,
there
well,
was any passing
the
involved.
The colour was mostly rust.
Yeah, it was a fun little car. The carburetor had a little arm that held the spring for the return of the gas pedal.
Yep.
The spring was too powerful, and the little arm was attached by one screw on the carburetor. So occasionally, when driving long trips going fast, because it's only a 4-speed, you had to go all
Yep.
down, this little arm would go down. And then when you let loose of the pedal, the
It wouldn't return the throttle.
wouldn't go back in parking position. So you let go of gas, you hit the clutch, and the car would So occasionally you would see me coming down from the autobahn, getting out of my car at a red stoplight, plonking open the hood, pulling back that lever, plonking down the hood again, and driving off.
Away you go again.
It never really got fixed, but yeah, fun cars. Well,
having
I
fun
think
with it.
on that odd note of, and also children, don't do this at home. If your car has holes in the frame, get it mended or get a new car. Don't drive those around.
Seek a professional.
That's a death trap. If you get hit by anything that's larger than a child's bicycle, your car will just disintegrate. There's no safety left in that frame.
No.
So on that note, I think we can call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
John, I thank you for having time to wax lyrical about anything but Tiny Fighting Man. Almost.
Well, I hope my ramblings... No, they didn't make sense at all. Don't worry about it. They don't need to make sense.
Why should they make sense? They're ramblings
exactly.
after all.
Yeah, that's it.
So you lot out there, tell me in the comments if this is the kind of content you'd like to see more of. And if not, I don't care. I will still try to make more of them, because this is my hobby. And you can all go bugger off. Or to quote the giant Jerry, go play in traffic.